guys. Our two guests tonight, the mother is a homeschooling mother of 5, wife of 11 years, and award-winning publicist for Fortune 500 brands, entrepreneurs, and advocacy organizations. She was selected a pre-production finalist for Donald Trump's Apprentice 2, and listen to this list. She has been a delegate to the Pope and the Archbishop of Canterbury at Vatican City and Lambeth Palace. She served as the Director of Public Relations for the American Bible Society and External Relations Manager of Global Public Policy for Time Warner, including HBO, New Line Cinema, and Time Inc. brands. However, CPS somehow found enough substantiation to seize her children, and in court, the judge found her guilty of educational neglect due to distrust of the government that he claimed has mentally impaired their children. With contacts like hers, it's pretty certain she made someone mad. Let's hear her story and his story. Welcome to the show, Autumn and Himmerd Black. Yes?
All right, guys.
Thank
Great
you
to
for
have
coming.
you.
Yes. Thanks so much for taking time out of your day, guys. We are so pleased to have you. We've been looking forward to this story for a while. When I first got the email, you guys thought that our audience in particular would be very interested in this case, and I completely agree. So would you give us some background to the story?
So we are a homeschooling family of 5, as you heard. We have 5 beautiful children. For the sake of the case, I'll leave their names out of it, but they are all under the age of 10. So they're small children. 2 are of compulsory school age. And so they've been homeschooled their entire lives. They are exceptionally smart, as a lot of homeschooled children are.
Yes.
They read several college-level textbooks. We teach from all sorts of different manuals. So we have 5 main pillars, which include God first. We teach emerging technology.
And I just want to interrupt there for just a second. God seems to be a very general term people use today. So we'll say Jesus.
Okay.
Very good.
Christ, the Bible. Not
Okay.
any other God. We don't serve any other gods. So I just wanted to throw that in there so people are aware.
To clarify. Very good.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're Christians.
Yes.
So we have these 5 pillars of education. It's God, it's law, it's economics, emerging technologies, and agriculture, real estate,
Health and nutrition.
So we form these pillars, and of course we covered all of the required subjects that the state also asks you to cover: traffic safety, bicycle safety, things like that.
And one of them also is health and nutrition.
Yeah, health and nutrition.
Okay.
So we were doing this for a while. We were in a building where there was, you mentioned someone was angry, and I'm going to tell you who that person was.
Great.
We were dealing with a slum lord where we made several complaints and asked for repairs. Naturally, you want to have habitable conditions for your home. This landlord worked with a slew of people to conspire and put together a fake ACS case against us. They knew that we were homeschooling, and they made an anonymous call to a hotline. And anyone who's dealt with this system knows that once you get that call, once that call comes through, you've put into motion a slew of events that you never dream of in your life to take place. We began to, at that time, the first visit came, I wasn't even home, I was working. No. My husband was home, and we got a knock on the door.
Yes.
From a CPS investigator, and she simply asked, she came with a general letter saying that I only had been accused of maltreatment, neglect, and child abuse.
With no official letterhead.
Yeah, there was no official letterhead. It was really seedy.
So that's not surprising.
Yeah, we didn't, I thought it was a joke. I was like, they've got to be kidding me. Like, what is this? And it didn't have his name anywhere on the document. So I guess they didn't know about him yet. So, but once they find out who else is in the home, everybody gets accused.
Right.
So it was me initially. She came back a couple of other times. I didn't meet her until 3 months later. I hadn't seen this lady. I think she'd come by 2 or 3 times. 3 months later, I meet her for the first time. She examines the arms and legs of our children. Humiliating, just absolutely humiliating. She looks at the kitchen cabinet. She looks at their clothes. And she says, I see no signs of abuse or neglect.
In front of my children, she made this statement.
Mm-hmm.
So we had a long-standing plan, of course, to leave this building that we had many complaints about. So we left, we moved. And my husband, there had been an incident with an upstairs neighbor. She liked to rain water. She had a drug problem. She would rain water onto our kitchen nonstop, 7 days a week. I mean, hours and hours upon hours a day. It was nonsensical.
Probably not 7 days a week, but it was often.
It was very often.
It was often.
It was egregious.
She would do what now? She would rain.
She would turn on her washing machine and let the spin cycle run out on the floor and leak down into the apartment beneath them. Which was us.
Many of the buildings in New York are very old. You know, you're when you think about the structures and the architecture in New York, you know, you can drive on anywhere in Manhattan, and you're dealing with some of the oldest buildings in the country. And this building was it's an older building, and she used to run her washing machine, and it would leak on it would come through our kitchen.
Wow.
Addressed it, spoke with her. I entreated her as a mother. I'm obviously not going to raise my voice or be unseemly with an elder woman because I have a mother who I love dearly, and I just wasn't raised that way. This happened several times. It got to be a bit annoying, but again, you know, there's a saying, I'm sure you've heard it, people normally default to the level of their training. And my training is you're not rude with elders.
You're respectful. I mean, that's a great quality that we've lost somewhere along the way.
So now I understand. She's raining water
machine.
down on in your kitchen. Okay.
It caused some electrical issues as well that were
I'm
visible.
sure.
Right.
Smoke coming from plugs, and you know, it's me that has to coordinate these repairs once this happens.
We were paying out of pocket at this point because the landlord wouldn't do anything.
Wow.
So,
got it.
You know, and again, for example, we cooked a big Thanksgiving dinner. We had venison and pheasant, and I had slaved over this meal, and then down comes this dirty rainwater over all the food.
Right.
You know, so it was those kinds of incidents. I'd go up there and had my newborn in my hands, and she'd curse me out. I think that was the last time that I knocked on her door. She actually greeted me with expletives. So I decided, my husband actually told me, don't go up there anymore, just leave it alone. So on March 12th, 2016, this is where I'll let you jump in and say what happened.
On March 12th of 2016, I'll have to back up. Almost 90 days prior to the day, on January 5th, 6th, and 12th of the same year, there was a situation with her son. Her son didn't knock on our door, but he was making some commotion outside of our door. This was a building that we were getting ready to leave. If you saw this building from the outside, you would never know there were as many issues in this building as there was. It's literally right near the water. It's right near Yankee Stadium, right near a highway. So very convenient, you know, if you're coming in from work or going to work, you're not going to be affected by the traffic as you would be if you lived somewhere else. As a matter of fact, Donald Trump was actually looking to purchase a building that was less than 2 miles down the road.
Wow.
So you're in the Bronx.
We're in the Bronx, right near Yankee Stadium, and her son was causing some commotion outside of our door. I opened my door to ask him if he could consider his neighbors. My neighbor later thanked me because he seemingly was under the impression it was okay to conduct himself this way. He threatened me. I happened to have been off on that day. My wife was off. It was a holiday. It was the first week of January. So New Year's, you're enjoying the New Year's. Christmas has just ended. From there, I went to the local precinct to report what took place and to get a police report.
Can I ask how old the kid was?
Oh, well, he's in his 30s.
Oh, okay. So he should have known better.
The guy,
Definitely.
You would have thought he would have known better, but he had some challenges.
Okay.
And when I looked in, they gave me a. When I got to the actual precinct, they gave me, I forget what they call this. The lineup of the different people that they're looking for, people that have warrants and so forth. And I saw his face. I didn't know his name at the time. This is probably the first time ever I've run into a situation where I found myself in a precinct. Normally, something takes place. You can reason with neighbors. You can reason with the local community, and you just go on about your life. In most situations, you're about my age or so. You've got a wife, you've got children, and none of us are going to gain anything by any kind of protracted hate or struggle amongst ourselves.
Not in your residence.
Certainly not in the same building where we live.
right.
She got word of this on March 12th, which was a morning that she, again, the same situation where she's running her washing machine, leaking in our kitchen. I go up to say, please, could you turn your washing machine off? She decided to call the police on me this day. She called the police on me. I was in my home with my children. I opened the door at gunpoint.
Whoa.
They came to my door with a gun. I did everything that the police asked. I held my hands up just so they could see that I wasn't reaching for a weapon or anything of that nature. I didn't want them to make any mistakes because I have every reason to live. They decided to arrest me in front of my children, which they later said that they didn't do in court, but they arrested me in front of my children. I was taken to Lincoln Hospital here in the Bronx, and they held me for 24 hours. I was chained to a gurney. I kept asking, why is this happening? Why is this happening? To my knowledge, this would have been as simple as what they refer to as a desk warrant. And then from there, maybe you have a court appearance. I have no criminal record. I have no history of drug use. As a matter of fact, I'm probably, amongst my friends, a person who has been given more thorough background checks or given background checks than maybe the average person. I had a gun license at one time.
Very difficult to get in New York.
Extremely difficult to get in New York City. You don't get a gun license in New York City if you have a criminal record, and it's about a year process.
Wow.
Yeah,
I didn't know it was possible at all. He's from New York. He still has family.
I was born in Yonkers.
Okay. I have family in Yonkers.
Yeah.
Okay. So extremely difficult in the city. Probably a little easier in Yonkers. Extremely difficult in the five borough.
Right.
And I was discharged. I was let go from the hospital. The woman who discharged me yelled at the officer who was guarding me for that 24 hours and made the statement, "Why do you keep sending people here to solve your problems?" That is an exact quote from an East Indian woman who discharged me. I was literally asked, what's the president's name? What time of day is it? Basic general questions. And then later told by a doctor, a different doctor than the one who discharged me, there's nothing wrong with you. I was told by the ACS investigator, had you been mentally ill or something been wrong with you, they would have held you for longer than 24 hours.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So from there, I go to I have a court appearance. It was at night. just telling me when to attend another court appearance. And it's been this kind of process. I was later offered a plea because I have no criminal history. And I took it because I could not attend the court hearing with this upstairs neighbor, which by the time they offered me the plea, I was on my 4th court appearance or 3rd court appearance, where you show up and they tell you, they just give you another date.
What was the charge?
The charge was, I believe, menacing.
Wow. And so they arrest you and take you in and hold you for 24 hours on that?
Yes. And what happens is that
but they dropped the charge.
Which charge?
The plea was for
harassment.
The
plea, I pled to harassment, excuse me.
Yeah.
I pled to harassment because, again, I couldn't continue to keep showing up for these court dates. Not only that, I was reading that statistically, when you don't take the plea, the government comes after you. And they're already after me on the ACS side. And I had read how draconian, or I've been reading how draconian that is, and how they really put the pressure on. So I'm being fought from several different angles, and I'm just hoping that I can get to some conclusion here.
Right.
So I did plead the harassment plea. Disappointed. I wouldn't consider that justice, because I've credited myself with managing my relationships and making sure that I didn't, well, all of us, making sure we don't have a record, and to have that on my record,
it won't be on your record, though.
wasn't justice. I was told that it was actually going to be sealed this September, but nonetheless, we all know nothing's really sealed. Right. If it's on your record, it's on your record. And I'm still disappointed about that to a great degree,
because we were the ones being harassed.
Yeah.
But you can see the irony in that. It blows me every time that we were the ones who were being harassed. We were the ones who were patiently dealing with this woman and her son, and this took place. On that day, I wasn't there that day. I was actually on Wall Street at the time at a meeting that my husband encouraged me to go to at a trading academy, learning how to do some binary option trading, things like that. The police officer gave me a call and said, there's been an incident with your husband and a neighbor, come up or your kids are going into foster care. We have them sitting in an emergency vehicle, an ambulance. And I was like, what? I could not believe my ears. I'm coming out of this meeting, great meeting. I posted to Instagram. I posted in front of the Raging Bull. I still have the photo up there. And now I hop in an Uber cab and I make my way up to the precinct. My children are scared to death. They're sitting in a ambulance, and the police officer is like intimidating them and threatening, if your mom doesn't come get you, you're going to foster care. And he told me later that they had tried to bribe them with Happy Meals.
Can I ask how old your children are?
At the time, my eldest was 9, and he addressed all of his brothers at the time himself and got them.
He actually moved the cop's hand away and said, "I'll dress my brothers."
Oh, good for him.
Yeah, and he did not speak to them at all, and they kept. I'll say 2 of them, not all of them, because a couple of them apologized and actually praised the children for not speaking to them and said, your sons did good. They did what you said to do. They didn't speak to strangers. So that was a few of them, but the 2 crooked ones actually reported that I was delusional.
Wow.
That I didn't know where I was, that I seemed confused.
I guess so.
Yeah, but that's apparently.
But somehow she was able to direct the Uber cab to pick up my children, but she was delusional and confused.
I was going to say coming from Wall Street, and
Well, that's a whole other story. In the hearing, the judge didn't believe I was on Wall Street, and the cop said, no, it only took her 10 minutes to get here. It took 40 minutes to get from Wall Street to the Bronx in the Uber. He didn't believe it. Well, I think he knew the truth because I presented the Uber receipt, which he struck from the record.
Wow. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, that's the kind of thing we're dealing with. So, they're trying to imply that I was wandering, confused, I don't know, this character that they painted of me. they struck my professional background from the record. He said that my degrees were nothing but merely online certificates. So I had to go ahead and post them online. So
tell us, because I didn't say that in the bio. Tell us what the degrees are and where you studied.
A bachelor's degree in psychology from Spelman College, where I got a domestic exchange scholarship to study at Stanford University, communications. My parents both went to Stanford. They met there. And so that's where I grew up, right next to Google and Facebook and Yahoo and all these fun places. It was fantastic. Went on to New York University, got my master's degree there. It was a joint program between the Stern School of Business and the Steinhardt School of Education. And then I had some continuing education at Harvard Law School through their program on negotiation. So funny enough, in New York, you don't have to have any special qualifications to homeschool.
Yeah,
You just have to be capable of teaching and what they call competent. So I assume that's why he struck my professional background in education from the record.
Everything that would have pointed, all of the information that would have benefited us, he struck from the record. We're dealing with a situation, and it's very common across the entire nation that these type of things are happening. And it would appear that, by the way, when it was mentioned that we are distrustful of government, both of our parents fought for this country. My father took fire for this country. Honorable discharge. Neither one of our fathers received a dishonorable discharge when they fought for this country. And we pay taxes, so I don't understand how someone is saying I have a distrust for government. Neither one of us have criminal backgrounds. Also, I want to say, neither one of us take prescription meds. I'm just saying these things because it seems like wherever I go, I'm asked the question, well, why would this be happening? With all of the information that's rampant that covers would reflect government corruption. For some reason, I still have to explain or state those things, which I don't mind doing. Because you can search the record today all over this country. What is happening to us is happening to people from all different ethnic backgrounds over this and different socioeconomic backgrounds.
Yes.
People, my urine has been tested twice, clean. Or it would have been mentioned that there was something wrong with me. The only thing they're finding in my urine is coffee. That's it, and bottled water. And it's just unfortunate that this is happening and that families are being disrupted for nothing.
Right. I want to also mention. Oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry. So I'm trying to piece everything together. So you feel that they were targeting you because you were homeschooling, or? It's CPS, or because it seems like, I'm not sure why they're picking on you when you went upstairs.
Well, here's the thing is that once CPS, what got the ball rolling is once CPS is ever involved, they just make up everything else and whatever it might, they might can use, and homeschooling has been used many other times.
And so what was the major reason why CPS got involved again?
The ACS case was initiated prior to the incident prior to the incident with the upstairs neighbor. A wealthy business owner here in this city, a wealthy European Jew who's very powerful, decided that he was going to open a case against me. I hadn't taken any legal action against him. I was having a human interface with building management. Now, I guess in the future, if I'm ever having an issue with someone, business-wise or otherwise, I guess I should just go to court. But again, I'm used to speaking with people. If I say that I agree to do something, I'm going to do it. And then if we handshake, you say that you're going to do it, and we go our separate ways and keep to what we said that we're going to agree to do. But this is not the first time that this particular landowner has done this. And as a matter of fact, there's actually an article about him in the Gotham newspaper here in this city. He has several different aliases that he uses. And he's got powerful attorneys. And he's a known slumlord. But
and he's in Supreme Court. He was in Supreme Court for tenant harassment.
yes,
So
these are tactics that, again,
commonly used.
It's
But the first allegation, after they made the general allegation, they eventually narrowed it down to educational neglect of a 7-week-old, of a 2-year-old.
Wow.
And then they took my young daughter off the breast. She was breastfeeding at 7 weeks. This occurred after he was going in to address the upstairs neighbor's incident. They immediately ushered him out of that trial and took him to family court. He was arrested on the spot, put into jail for 13 days. In that period of time, he called me and said, look, Autumn, you got to come bring the children. You got to bring the children. That was the last time I would spend the night with my.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
I was there for 13 days because I didn't want to report on my family and have cops come in the middle of the night or early morning. I was hoping that, and we actually have a video up on our page where all of my sons were dressed the way that I'm dressed now and were, honorably come in and be able to handle the matter. I didn't want people knocking on our door, my wife doesn't, unsuspecting and, has the children whisked away. I thought that would be very traumatic. So what happened, I ended up being jailed in New York for 13 days.
Right. And I brought the children in and they immediately removed them. They arrested me as well, immediately removed the children and put them into foster care. They've been there for 489 days. And we've been fighting this case for 489 days.
They're still in foster care right now?
They're still in foster care. He granted custody to my mother in California, 3,000 miles away. So they're very close right now to where these fires are taking place. So I'm deeply concerned.
Yes.
But it's been a huge mess. What happened was after they could not prove educational neglect, they immediately put our children in public school for the first time, the worst public schools in the Bronx. Mm-hmm. They immediately tested them, gave them standardized tests, which they passed with flying colors. Everybody was like, oh my goodness, your kids are so smart. But they would never show us what the records said. We demanded school records, never showed up. It's been 489 days. We've never seen the report cards. Yet we've heard, and the children have said, I got an A on all these tests that they've been taking. So they clearly are not challenged in public school. We know that because they were always given challenging assignments at homeschool. When they couldn't prove that, they came up with ex parte allegations of inadequate food, clothing, and shelter. This is a bundle package that often hits you after the first allegation doesn't work out for CPS, or in fact, our CPS investigator suddenly resigned. She wouldn't be available for testimony. Then we had the ACS commissioner resign. Then we had several caseworkers resign. There were 9 resignations related to our case.
Why would you not leave the ACS investigator on? She's the very crux of the case. She's the one that's been having the interface with the family, which she hadn't been having any interface with us because she said out of her own mouth when she saw my children, I see no signs of abuse. That's an exact quote from her. But even once we got to the court process, why would you excuse your ACS investigator when she is the very reason that we're there? Why is it she testifying? Why doesn't she have any notes?
Right.
I asked to see the ACS investigator's notes in court.
They said there were none.
Okay.
Wow.
Yet they continue with this game that we're playing in court, that there's some case.
And Angie, you mentioned how they make up a case as they go, and that's precisely true. It's not just with us. We've heard so many people have reached out to us since we made our story public. We waited 138 days before we said anything because we just wanted to get our kids back, be quiet, put our heads down, get over the embarrassment, because of course this is embarrassing, it's humiliating, it hurts, it's painful.
Yes.
But we waited 138 days, but it just got to the point where we were not getting justice. The lawyers were doing us in court. We had these police officers lying and saying they saw our children naked. which is crazy. Why would we ever parade our children naked in front of strangers?
What's interesting is that the cop said, the police officer said that she saw our children naked.
Sitting in urine and feces.
But the ACS investigator never corroborates this story. This is what's fascinating.
And our children were taken to the hospital where nurses looked at them and they had no feces on them, no urine on them. And what she said was that rainwater coming down from the neighbor was urine.
Oh, wow.
Our children would have never, the very first time that our children were inspected was the day that I was arrested on March 12th. That was the first time our children were taken from us. My wife leaves Wall Street to show up at the hospital to get our children back. But while that was taking place, my children were examined by nurses. Had those nurses found any signs of what they deemed an imminent risk? Now, there had been an ACS investigator, different from the initial one, who had been dispatched, because that's protocol in New York. And the police officer who arrested me was also at the hospital. So our children had been seen. They had been viewed from every orifice. You know, they're asking them questions, and there was no guarantee that we were going to be giving our children back that day. March 12th was a Saturday. They gave my children back to my wife. The nurses apologized to my wife because they saw
how well behaved and beautiful
my children weren't bouncing off of the walls. I think sometimes maybe we associate more than 1 or 2 or 3 children with a wild family. My children are mannerable. My children are upright. Since my children have been gone, they haven't gotten a fight, in one fight, in some of the worst schools in the Bronx.
But they've been slapped and abused in
foster care.
No
school teacher has a bad report about any of my children. How does this happen? How does this happen if they are this narrative that's been trying to be depicted of them?
When we brought up the abuse that was taking place of our children, and I know this happens, your children go off, they never knew abuse until they got into foster care.
Yeah.
Go into foster care, now they're starting to be starved if they mention our name. They're being slapped by other foster children. They're being locked in a room. They have to drink out of bathroom faucets because they're so thirsty, and they won't be given. They're not given water. When we reported these things to the judge in court, he jailed us for 3 days, me at Rikers Island and my husband at Manhattan.
They also,
I've never been to jail.
And I don't want to make it seem as if I'm explaining these things or describing these events like I'm coming from a place of complaint. I'm only stating these things. I'm so happy we get the opportunity to speak to you, because in New York, whether it be the law, whether it be entertainment, trends, it normally sets a precedent for the rest of the country.
Right.
And this particular apparatus has also set the trend for the rest of the country. So I'll continue with where I was. When you describe these things that are happening to your children in foster care, they will up the ante. They will continue to antagonize more. My former lawyer said to me, Mr. Black, they are going to antagonize you once you get to the foster care agency. She said, don't worry about it. Just have your visit. But this is what they're going to do. And this is what they do. In response to one of our more recent videos that we put up of what was actually happening at the foster care agency, the district attorney for Manhattan rewarded this foster care agency with, I think it's over $100 million.
$25 billion.
$25 million.
Yeah. And
extra funding.
The head of the foster agency that manages our children sits on the task force for ACS CPS New York.
A newly established task force.
So we know that, we've appealed to him many times. Our emails get ignored. His name is Jess Stanhauser, CEO of Graham Wyndham. And he has a very high position on the board, a task force for the new and improved ACS, since ACS was getting accused of neglecting children to the point of death. We've noticed since our case began, we have lots and lots of propaganda. New York Post, New York Times, The New Yorker. We're avid readers of all trade magazines and publications and worldwide publications. And what we noticed is that there was an increase in the CPS propaganda, especially as it related to very well-behaved children, especially as it related to 2 loving parents who you wouldn't suspect would be guilty of child abuse. as it related to you're never getting your kids back, no matter what you do. You know, lots of discouraging propaganda.
Yeah.
But, you know, ultimately, we've stayed very faithful. We've tried to keep our kids encouraged, most of all, because they've just demanded, they've wanted to come home from day one. And of course, there's no such thing as a real law guardian in this case.
Yeah.
They're not being.
So we have a couple of questions.
Yeah, I've got a couple of questions.
Me
First
too.
of all, I'm pissed right now, but you don't have to say that. I'm going to say that. Number one, where is the physical location of your children right now?
California.
Are they in California now?
They're in Brentwood, California, right near these fires that are taking place, not too far away from the fires that are taking place in California right now.
Okay.
Yeah,
And they're with
her mother.
And they're with your mother, right?
So what is the relationship with your mother like?
Oh, wow.
I'll let you explain it.
Very, very poor. Because before this all took place, I read Carlos, as this was taking place at the very beginning, I bought Carlos Morales' book, Legally Kidnapped. And one thing that came off to me that frightened me was that if there are people that have grievances with you, CPS will go to those people to amp up their story.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So my mother has a grievance with me and my husband. We're getting married. She just doesn't care for my husband, and therefore now she doesn't care for me. And I always knew that if she couldn't love my husband, she couldn't love my children. And she's pretty much displayed that. She has great disdain for them being there. I think it was out of fear that she took them on. And ultimately, she said a lot of damaging things to CPS about me prior to me even knowing there was an open case. So they did an investigation before I even knew it was taking place.
Personal matters that have nothing at all to do with an ACS case.
I'll give you an example. I was not able to attend my father and stepfather's funerals because I wasn't told about the dates by her. She didn't want me present. She later told the CPS investigator that I was, what was the word that she used?
She said that
I rejected my family, so she thought I was mentally ill because I rejected my family.
She didn't say that you're mentally ill. She said that you had mental issues. Okay. Those are hers. Those are
CPS takes those words and they use it to amp up their service for you and makes it worse and makes it seem like you're an unfit parent because somehow my relationship with my mother equated an unfit, unstable mother.
Not a good mother, yeah.
She's unapologetic. She's sticking to her story. I've asked her to, why don't you just tell the truth for the sake of the children? And we're just at a point now where conversations are not healthy, and we're not able to come to an understanding because she just won't tell the truth about me or about my husband.
But the Department of Health and Hygiene here in New York City states that
imminent risk.
What my wife just described wouldn't fall under mental issues. Unless you did a harm to yourself or others, you're not even supposed to be taking a mental health exam. Again, I have no history of the use of prescription meds. I don't harm people. I try to always be a blessing to my neighbors, no matter what background they're from. And my wife the same. I think her background, if we were just going to talk about her only, she's spent too much time in classrooms to really be focused on trying to harm anyone. And you would think, I think what basically was happening, some adults, they made a movie, The Fockers. So I think it was a very relatable movie, I'm sure, to many married couples. They weren't liked by their in-laws. But I think you've gone beyond, or you've overstepped a certain line when you make the choice to choose personality over principles. I don't necessarily have to agree with everything someone in their 60s or 70s believes. They're from a different time. They have a different set of experiences. My grandmother lived through a depression. My wife's grandmother lived through a depression. So that's a different kind of living. There's an older woman online. I forget. She has a channel. She's dead now. She was so revered by the online community because she used to make these
The jellies and jams.
Depression meals is what it was called. Maybe you've seen it. But the YouTube community loved her. She's no longer living now, but her videos are still up. I'm sure none of us can relate to everything that she went through. Or people who slept on Central Park benches because there was no work and got up the next day to hopefully maybe get a cup of soup or maybe find some kind of work to make it. That's a different kind of existence when you live through those kind of times compared to us talking about recession, depression times today. And maybe we're still working, but maybe, there are just other economic factors in place that are creating a much lower ceiling, financial ceiling today. So it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate.
Has CPS, or what do you call it, ACS? Is that what is it called?
ACS, Administration for Children's Services here, but I know it's called Child Protective Services in other jurisdictions.
So has ACS given you guys a plan on how to get your children back?
Have they legally been adopted by your mother?
They haven't been legally adopted. The concern that I've had, the concern that we both had, is that when you go to take a mental health exam, because of the way the industry is structured, and I actually put up a video online, a very informative video called Mental Health Industry Exposed. Very well circulated documentary online. And it talks about how the industry was set up in such a way that they're going to find something.
Oh, yeah.
And that's just how the industry is set up.
That's their narrative. All the cards are stacked against you. So did they give you a working outline of things that you needed to do in order to get the children back?
Very, very far down the line. Our children had been seized for at least 3 or 4 months when we finally got an email, because we kept asking, what is it that you need? Do you need records? Do you need, we thought the most logical thing was to show you the homeschool records, What else do we need to talk about?
But they've already been tested. The initial claim was educational neglect. They've already been tested numerous times.
Right.
The state of New York said, this man is not a criminal, but we can't just let you go. Give him a mandatory service charge of $150. Give him the harassment plea, let him go. This is what the assistant district attorney decided. So
yes, we got a plan. Way down the line, our children had already been taken and traumatized in the whole thing. And it was for baby and me, like 12 weeks of that, right. 12 weeks anger management, right. Mental health exams. There was in any other evidence-based therapies they wanted to give both to myself and my children and my husband. And they wanted him to go away for 6 months, for an indefinite amount of time. So
yeah, they always want to break up the family.
Yeah, force a divorce. It's crazy. And I asked, I said, why is this apparatus being used to create a divorce situation? I didn't bring him here to court. He didn't bring me here to court.
Right.
This is insane. Why is he I'm the non-respondent mother, and they have these terms, right? Yeah. But at the end of the day,
when you enter family court, you are both deemed adverse to one another.
Right?
Yeah. Wow. So we didn't have the same lawyer. Right. They set it up so that going into the process, you can't have the same lawyer.
Right.
So there's 3 lawyers. There's a children's lawyer, there's my wife's lawyer, and then I'm supposed to have counsel.
Right. And what they told me is the ACS attorney, the children's guardian, and the judge will give you your children back in a hostage, some type of hostage agreement where we'll give you one by one. If you say that he domestically abuses you, perjure yourself from the stand, tell them that he abuses you, go move into a domestic violence shelter with your children as you get them one at a time, and then we'll decide when you're ready to engage in therapies and all this other nonsense that had this unending, it was in perpetuity. It was like, when will it end? So our concern was that you have this examination, they come up with the finding, and now you're mandated to take psychotropic drugs. The judge can order the drugs after you take the examination, but he cannot order a mental health evaluation. and did it to our children already. And they said that my child drawing a house with a chimney indicated that he was abused.
What?
We have a document that's stating this. Everything that we're saying, we have documents to prove.
Yes.
None of what we're saying is hearsay. We have documented evidence. Everything that's come out of my mouth today, my wife's mouth today, we have documented evidence.
We've been filming from day one, and that is what I would highly recommend to your audience. We stay what I call cocked and loaded with SD cards, because you have to film these people. We have it on tape. The agency's saying, yes, I've lied. Okay.
It's up online now.
It's online now.
And that was the same. And the response to that video was the
threat to terminate our rights.
The district attorney of Manhattan stating that they've earmarked this $25 million or so for this Graham Windham agency.
Wow.
Yeah.
Folks, if this doesn't enrage you, I don't know what story would. I'm just like, I'm really flabbergasted right now, to be honest with you. They have, I'm listening to your story, and they've beaten both of you down so badly that you're telling me that we're not trying to attack the government, and we're not. I know they've got you so defensive right now. It's unbelievable. This is like Orwellian. This is like 1984 Orwellian stuff that we're listening to, and I can't believe it. I'm just so really angry right now. I really am.
And we say all the time, it can happen to anyone, just in your wildest dreams.
Doesn't matter where you went to school.
No.
Doesn't matter if you're black or white.
No.
Doesn't matter if you're a homeowner or not. Okay. It doesn't matter. I was actually willing to, for the sake of my children, separate from my wife. Well, my wife also, what we later found out was that what they were going to do, there was going to be a restraining order against me. So I didn't know this. But the day that I was going to do this, they positioned court officers to my rear. My lawyer was on my right-hand side, and I asked for permission to speak to the judge. As I was asking for permission, literally the lawyer grabbed my shoulder, and she's shaking me. Because on this particular day, they were looking to try to incite some type of anger. Because I'm a pretty big guy, so I guess they were thinking, okay, he'll lose control. He'll be upset. Maybe he'll hit her. I have no history of domestic violence. My wife's never called 911 on me. I've never hit a woman in my life. I never had a girlfriend that I hit.
Perfect gentleman.
Ever.
Yeah.
See,
Okay, I'm not a perfect guy. I'm not perfect, but I've never, ever hit a woman ever. And on this particular day, I think they were under the impression that we can incite anger today, and we can just hurt in this case,
right now.
And we'll be able to prescribe services right after it happens.
Right.
When this happened, I was under the impression that it happened for good reason, and that I wasn't supposed to separate from my wife. I was desperate at that time. I later find out they were going to there was going to be a restraining order in place, which he later put in place for the both of us. Yeah. Because you're supposed to be able to attend hospital visits with your children. So as my children were being forcibly vaccinated.
Oh my gosh.
All of my children sustained vaccination injury. My little daughter's eyes were rolling back in her head.
Oh my God.
Heroin addict. During visitations.
They had warts all over.
My second son had warts all over his hand. My second son is very fair skinned. So he had warts over his hands and his feet. My third son had a big lump on his head.
Yeah.
My eldest son always looked like he was sweating all of the time. Like he looked extremely tired. He looked
dehydrated.
He looked as if he wasn't sleeping at all.
Right. But the judge went forward with it without giving us an opportunity to appeal his order. He made the order in August. We had 30 days to appeal that decision before they forcibly vaccinated them. And he didn't allow time. It was on the 2nd that they went ahead and vaccinated our children. We couldn't take it back. And it was absurd for religious insincerity.
Now,
what does that mean?
I don't know. In New York, your homeschool children don't have to be immunized.
No.
And they do go to public school, they can get a vaccination waiver for religious reasons.
Us too.
Our verbal argument, we submitted a written philosophy against vaccinations.
Yeah.
And he tossed it out the window and said, it's, you're religiously insincere. Who are we kidding here? This is what he said.
I'd like to add a caveat to that. I'm not against hospitals.
No, not at all.
I'm not against treatments that will be beneficial for adults or children.
Right.
But prior to, I'm sure maybe you all have done some research on Guillain-Barré and the different types of illnesses that are arising out of unnecessary vaccinations.
Absolutely.
Maybe it would be more beneficial for children to wait to be vaccinated, because I noticed that my 10-year-old was not physically exhibiting some of the adverse reactions to the vaccinations as my other 4 were. And that's because he was the eldest, I believe. Also, what was I going to say?
Well, we did get a chance to appeal
Just
the
lost my train of thought.
vaccinations.
Yeah.
And then they just withheld the records forever.
Oh.
We had to keep asking for them over and over.
I know what I was going to say. Prior to the forcible vaccinations, blood work had been taken. Now, their blood work came back, and my children did not have any communicable diseases whatsoever.
No abnormal findings.
No abnormal findings. They were taken to Bellevue. At this point, this was the second time that I'm aware of. My eldest son cried to me and was so ashamed that strangers were looking at his genitalia, that a particular time that they had been screened or evaluated, he didn't even tell me. He says, "Daddy," I said, "Why didn't you tell me, son?" He said, "Because I was ashamed."
Oh, man.
This is what my 10-year-old said.
So there's a clip that we keep playing of him saying, "Mommy, they took us away to abuse us. They took us away just so they could abuse us." And as a parent, you're looking at your child and you're like, "Oh my God!" Like,
of course, you're innate. You want to protect your children, and they don't allow you to protect your children. Yes.
How dare the state make the decision to vaccinate your children? That's your choice. I'm just really angry right now.
Not under continuity of government protocols. Because, see, we're already living in a police state.
Yes, we are.
Kept my mouth closed for a long time, and the greatest reward to me will be for people to just get the word out. I'm hoping very soon, once they decide to actually allow us the opportunity to receive the doctor transcript that they're going to give us, because they've actually changed dates, and they've created information that is not accurate. But the one thing that they haven't been able to do or point to is any sign of imminent risk or any evidence of imminent risk whatsoever, which is the only reason, according to the law, to the statutes, that you're supposed to be able to interrupt the parental-child relationship.
Yeah.
So we're 16 months in, no sign of imminent risk, which imminent risk, as a matter of fact, I even asked during one of the hearings as they were bantering back and forth, what does this have to do with imminent risk? The judge immediately ended the hearing for that day because he knew the only reason that we were supposed to have still been there at that point, and at that point, that was 100 plus days in, was imminent risk. And it's like he was reminded of why he's supposed to, or the only cause that he's supposed to be able to remove children from their parents. But this is a big moneymaker.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Money is there. It's all money driven. But yes, it's also smoke and mirrors. And if you keep them on track, they don't like that. They don't like you to keep reminding.
By the way, did they put your children on medication at all?
Not that we know of as of yet.
Don't know of any meds that they put them on. But the thing about it is that while in foster care here in New York City, before they were taken, transported to the West Coast, what I noticed and what my children were sharing with me is they were being bullied into lying to us.
Yeah, that happens a lot.
They're being taught to not speak to us, and that if they do speak to us, no food, restricted food, only lettuce tonight, or we're not going to get fed immediately. So this type of behavioral conditioning Also, the foster care agency has engaged in neuro-linguistic programming. On an occasion that my children showed up for visitation, out of the blue, they were all saying, "We need freedom. We need freedom."
My 2-year-old was like, "Freedom, freedom."
And when I asked, I said, the next time that the foster care parent is advised to share that with you all, please also share with them that with freedom comes great responsibility from a biblical perspective and from a natural perspective. We're all expected, to whom much is given, much is required. We're all expected with all that we're given, whether it be monetary, whether it be responsibility, whether it be information, to be good stewards of it. So great that, and that's the angle that I took, even though my children were not restricted. Even if you could see, or if somehow I could share, if you look online, you can see my children and you can evaluate for yourself, because we had film of them just in their natural state. Mm-hmm. And it's all online.
The thing is, they target young children. Yes. Because teenagers aren't worth much money to them. But if they can get the young children, we have 5. There's a funding stream for each of those 5 children. Yeah. For every finding that they find against each of those 5 children, there's another funding stream that's opened up. Absolutely. So finding funding. So after my child had been with the first foster garden, they were split apart and put in multiple different homes over and over and switched out again and again, different people. They had been 1 weekend with them, and this foster guardian comes in and says, "Oh, your son has anger management issues." What? My son is the most peaceful, sweet, calm.
He hasn't harmed anyone, though. Child. As a matter of fact, my sons have been teaching children who attend public school academics.
Right.
My son came to me and said, "Daddy, the young lady who was actually hitting my son, I don't know if it was happening purposefully because they were looking for him to react, or if it was just happening because she was being mischievous, but he shared with me, 'Daddy, can I teach her?' And I said, 'Of course. That's why you have more to teach.' And this is what he began doing. This is what's been happening. Right. Homeschool works. It does work. If I can't get any other message across as well, it doesn't make sense to sit a child, your children, in a classroom of 40 to 50 kids. There's one teacher there. There's not even an assistant in the classroom in most instances, unless there's, a teacher that they're grooming to be a teacher. Mm-hmm. I know that used to happen when I was coming up. I'm not sure if it's so prevalent now, but 40 to 50 kids per class. In New York City, as of January 1st of 2016, where the city was just beginning to brag about a 70% high school graduation rate. 70. Okay, and it was lower than that when I began teaching my son.
And it's just 50% for foster kids.
Yes.
So once they hit that system, you pretty much forget about it.
70% of the kids in foster care will end up in the penal system.
Yeah. Yes.
So it was like they took them off the trajectory of success that we had planned for them and we had mapped out for them before they even were here. And they put them on a mediocre, sure to fail, prison to pipeline track.
Yeah.
And it's just in our face. And
wow,
this is unbelievable.
Yeah.
And they have a quota too, by the way, right? They have a quota of,
which has to increase every year also.
So I wanted everybody to understand that CPS, ACS has a quota, and that's in unbelievable. So it doesn't behoove them to keep families together. It behooves them to break families apart like they're doing with you guys. This is unbelievable. I didn't know that the family court, when you two go into court, they have you guys as divided, and you have to be represented by different attorneys. I didn't know that.
Wow. When we went to see a private lawyer, we went to see a couple of private lawyers to get consultations. They would say the same thing. They talk to us and they say, "Oops, sorry, I've talked to both of you in your adverse witness party, so I can't represent you."
And are you allowed to say, "No, we're not adverse. We love each other. We're, we've
said it over and over.
I know.
It doesn't affect the petition, the way it's constructed. I think it'll come into play in our appeal, which we are appealing.
When is that?
Sorry?
When is the appeal set for?
So we don't have a date yet. In New York Family Court, you have to get approved for an appeal. So we're in the process of waiting to see if they will approve our ability to appeal.
Sure.
And then after that, they said it'll be a year or so. Before that happens, we're praying for a miracle, of course. We did see some victory in Connecticut where they made it a law where foster children cannot be vaccinated against parental consent. So that's
happened.
a big win.
That's happened since our case. I mean, literally maybe 6 weeks ago.
Right. We've been
maybe less than 12 weeks ago. And I believe it was directly connected to this particular case, considering that Connecticut is part of the tri-state area.
Right. And I mean, we were members of the Homeschool Legal Defense Association, LEA, which is Loving Education at Home. It's a Christian organization, and they've been extremely helpful in crafting the words for parental rights and the U.S. Constitution, defense of our claims, and our parental rights and our ability to have a familial association with our children, which unfortunately is even being disrupted right now because our calls are very infrequent. They're very, unnecessarily strained. We get hung up on a lot.
I'd also like to say, for anyone who may be under the impression, well, golly, if the maternal grandmother takes issue with the maternal mother, maybe something is wrong with them. Well, I would just point people to, I believe it's the 31st chapter or so of Genesis. Read the story of Joseph, where his own brothers sold him into captivity. All right, and initially had planned to kill him. So it's not unfounded if we're going to look at the Bible standard for our lives.
You're right.
To look here into God's word and to see that this is not a first time.
Yeah.
And that even the very statements that my wife's mother have made have nothing to do with
my children.
Right. No.
Parents.
No, if I may, I mean, I have gone through a little bit of that kind of stuff too. What you're explaining is not love. I love you. I conditionally love you. I love you if you do what I want you to do, with who I want you to do, when I want you to do it. But if you're not going to do that, then I don't love you. And that's not love, that's control. And a lot of people have a lot of difficulty with that. And there's a huge difference.
And by the way, what you're guys describing right now is not uncommon. We've heard this several times, that people that we've interviewed, that somebody in the family didn't like this person and actually worked with CPS. And we're like, oh my God, do not work with CPS on that. You lose your children. It's so difficult to get them back once CPS, ACS gets involved. It's just really horrendous.
It is a nightmare. You guys, your story is incredible. I know there's so much more to tell. It's difficult to squeeze, several years into an hour, but I want you to tell us the name of your YouTube or your website, and then tell us what Free the Kings is. And I'm going to put all of this down in the description and send everybody your way. And then I think I also have a CPS contact in the New York area, and I want to be sure to get you in touch with Pamela Olson also. We want to get a couple of balls rolling to help you guys out however we can.
Thank you. Thank you deeply. That's so gracious of you. I appreciate just the platform. But our blog is freethekings.wordpress.com. And our YouTube page my username is Crown of His Glory.
Okay. Crown
of His Glory. So if you put youtube.com/Crown of His Glory, we've been chronicling this journey for quite some time. This is our flyer that we've made of our children for Free the Kings in Jesus' name. That's pretty much the tagline we're using. Free the Kings was birthed out of hearing other people's stories, and we wanted our pain to be their triumph. So as we share, and that's really the only purpose of the page, we're not God, and we certainly have limited powers in the courtroom, no power at all, actually. So we wanted to encourage people in their faith as they have to face this kind of travesty. have them hold on to what they can do through information, because there's so many things that if we had known, you know, back then, it would have positioned us better to make different choices and maneuver differently. I don't know if the outcome would have been different, but we just would have known. And just knowing is sometimes quite comforting. Like, so these resources like HSLDA, LEA chapter, parentalrights.org, Sean McMillan in California, who's fighting for people out there, Coalition for Children and Families. And then I look forward to hearing about your resources. But those kinds of resources have been helpful. So that's what we want to offer to people through Free the Kings Foundation. Not only information, telling our story, documentaries, short documentaries, and podcasts and interviews with other people who have been through the same, so that we can do some information sharing and collectively end what we know as CPS.
And I know, you know, there's a lot of conversation today, you know, surrounding the Trump administration and his constituency, alt-right and other various groups that take offense with what they would call repression or oppression of their rights here in America. When you look at our page, everything may not suit you. There may be something that you find offensive. The demographics of our community may not look the same. We may not even be able to eat with one another. I personally am one of those people that don't take issue. I remember I was asked a question a while back and someone said to me, well, a white man said, I don't want my daughter marrying a black man, you know, and then someone may be under the impression that that's a racist comment. I personally don't take that as a racist comment. We're all different.
Right.
But I think we can live peaceably with one another. You might like crawfish. I might not like crawfish. You might like oysters. I might like sea bass. Okay? You might live next door to me, and you may never want my family over for dinner, but we're peaceful with one another. I don't disrespect you. You don't disrespect me. You know what? I see your son being not handled properly by the sex offender in the community, and I grabbed him and put him at your door. But we're not like intimately involved with one another because maybe that just is not best for our families. I'm only pointing this out as a hypothetical.
Yeah.
Because, you know, lots of statements are made from people from different backgrounds, and it's unfortunate. But we have a common problem here.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
it is that government is becoming more draconian today than ever.
Yes.
If a guy who's not a criminal, you know, you see faces that may look similar to mine in the news, but this one is not a criminal, nor is this one. We're upright people. Our families fought for this country, led for America. My grandfather was in World War II. My father fought in Vietnam. My wife's, both of her fathers fought in Vietnam. Her stepfather fought in Vietnam. Her natural father fought in Vietnam. To say that we are distrustful of government is crazy. And again, I think that maybe we can work together, that we should work together. You know, it seems like there's this divide in America today. And again, I don't know even how to best articulate it and put it into words. I think there just needs to be an honest conversation. And I'm going to just say it amongst the races. It needs to be an honest conversation. You stating that you don't like something doesn't mean that you're racist.
Yeah.
Me stating that I don't like something doesn't mean that I'm racist.
Right.
Yeah.
You saying you don't want to eat at Red Lobster with me doesn't mean that you're racist. It just means you'd rather sit and eat with people you feel comfortable around.
Yeah.
Or maybe you want to eat with whoever or someone that,
Yeah.
you know,
And
background.
if I can also, once again, if I may, you know, saying that you don't trust the government does not mean that you don't love being an American and you don't love America and you don't love American people. But that does not mean that you think the government knows what's best for your children, because they don't. the parents know what's best for the children.
Well, and the fact of the matter is, when I listen to your story, there's a reason why people don't trust the government, is because they're not being trustworthy right now. So, you know what, government, maybe they need to start gaining our trust back again. And that's the problem, okay? Because there's a lot of people that don't trust the government, and for good reason.
Yeah.
If I'm in no violation of any of the state constitution, of any of the home rule charter, of any of the statutes, colorable law or constitutional law, if I'm not in violation of any of these things, and you're still saying I'm distrustful of government, I don't owe the federal government any money on my taxes, what are we talking about?
Right. Yeah, but the thing is, they throw terms around, they throw names around, they make up names, and they never get asked, what is that? What exactly does that mean? What does that mean? Give me a definition of not trusting the government. What does that mean to you?
That is a really good question. What does that mean, that you don't trust the government? Does that mean that you're questioning the narrative all the time? Because I hear things in the mainstream media all the time that I don't believe, frankly. So if I don't believe their narrative, does that mean I don't trust the government?
Makes you a terrorist.
Does that mean that we all have to be zombies? Are we living in Nazi Germany? Is that where we're at right now?
Very close.
One of the press releases was Auschwitz in New York, because forcible vaccinations.
Yeah, that
forcible
is
vaccination.
So
it's like Nazi Germany.
So our founding forefathers told us we better question the government. It's our right to do so.
And that's what I call patriotic.
Yeah, absolutely. So,
you know, I worked for a 200-year-old religious organization where the presidents were Francis Scott Key, who wrote the Star-Spangled Banner, and John Quincy Adams. You know, I was proud to represent that organization. I was proud to fall back on the biblical tenets that inform the Constitution and that inform our rights today as citizens. And it was, you know, it was a real hit in the gut to hear somebody say you're not religiously sincere and you distrust government after all that we've collectively done as a family for this country, and how we believe in the potential of what America could be.
Yeah.
And we tried to instill that in our children. We want them to be contributing members of society. We want them to be global citizens, and that's important to us.
Well, I'm so glad.
Educated children, no matter what background they're from, ethnic background they're from, educated children, upright children make better neighbors, I think. And I truly believe that the children that you neglect, whether they be of your household or not, will be the very ones breaking in your home. The majority, if I'm not mistaken, the majority of the people who are in this vast prison system that we have, the largest in all the world, the majority of them are there for economic crimes.
Yeah.
Because clearly they didn't have something that they needed to take care of themselves. I mean, if you have knowledge, entrepreneurship knowledge, if you create a product, you know, if you're a teenager and you can make, or you have some system of being able to fabricate toilet paper, fabricate women and men's underwear, you are savvy in the real estate area. I'm talking about in high school, before you ever got to college, if you were going to attend college. You know, if you were on a scholarship for college and yet you had a little business that you were working on the weekend, because production has been driven home in your mind, how much better off is that child going to be?
How much better off will America be if we can start producing?
Exactly, because yes, that makes a good neighbor. It also makes a good father. It makes a good husband. It makes a good, you know, son. It makes a good person, period.
Well, I got to tell you, I'm really happy that we had you guys on here and to tell your story. And I really admire how strong that y'all have remained through this. And I just ask that you continue to remain strong, to do what you're doing, and be strong. And of course, I know because of your faith in God, everything's going to work out. I really believe that. And we're going to do everything possible on our end to help you. And people, you know, like you that are going through the same thing. So God bless you guys. Really, thank you so much for coming on.